All right, I'd like to call Snoqualmie FNA committee together. Please note attendance. I believe Councilmember Watton told us he would not be here this week. So please note his absence as excused.
I'm here.
There you are. I didn't see it.
I'm just in a different room.
I so understood. I thought about that option myself. All right, let's go ahead and proceed in. Any changes or revisions to the agenda as presented? All right, hearing none, we'll consider the agenda approved and move forward. Let's move on to public comments. Are there individuals either in the committee or online wishing to make comment on items not currently on the agenda? Please physically or metaphorically raise your hand. I do not see any hands in the room, nor do I see any hands online. All right, with that, we'll close out public comments and we'll move in to the rest of the agenda. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes dated March 7th, 2023. Chair has no comments or revisions.
No comments.
Councilmember Watton, do you have any comments or revisions in minutes?
I'm good.
All right,
Thank you.
unless there are objections, we will consider the minutes as approved as presented. All right, moving on, consideration of claims approval report dated March 27th, 2023. Chair reviewed, I've got no comments. I saw no comments in email. Are there any questions or comments from any of the other committee members?
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Unless there are objections, we will move forward with the claim approval report as presented. Moving on to agenda bill, we have agenda bill 23041, amending Snoqualmie personal policies by rescinding and repealing policy 2.33. Who could speak this one? Which is pretty clear cut, I think, given where we are in the world. Sit down.
I can take the lead, and Ms. Ferguson is here if there are HR specific questions. This is related to, it would repeal personnel policies that were added the last time the council saw some semi-comprehensive updates. The mayor's vaccination and masking directive was incorporated into the personnel policies in toto, and now based on changes in the data and circumstances in the state, high vaccination levels in the area, and various other circumstances that are detailed in the agenda bill, the administration is proposing to repeal that policy, which would then put us back to the vaccination being a voluntary step. There would remain the policy that was previously included at the time that the vaccination requirement was added, that would offer a floating holiday incentive to employees who vaccinated, came to the city, and then obtained a booster. So there would be incentives remaining in the policy for people to be vaccinated, but it would no longer be mandatory. And it's following the lead of the governor and other jurisdictions. And again, it's based specifically on the changed circumstances and the health data that's detailed in the attachments to the agenda bill. Happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Mayhew?
So I read the materials. Thank you. They were very thorough. I understood all of them. The one thing, and I'm not implying anything, I'm just asking, the thing I wasn't able to sort of get clear in my mind was why rescind? In other words, there's a bunch of things laid out as to why you might not need to enact such a policy. If you could look at it that way. Hey, here's a bunch of reasons why you don't need such a policy. I thought that was clear, but the part that wasn't clear to me is, okay, but why rescind it? What benefit accrues to the city by rescinding it? There was sort of an implication. There was a mention that we have open jobs, which sort of seemed extraneous until I thought maybe that's the implication, is that somehow a hiring issue for us. But that's all I'm getting is what we must be asking for this for a reason. I'm just trying to get clear. What is the reason we want to do this?
That's a good question. One of the reasons is for recruitment purposes. We are being asked if the city of Snoqualmie is going to continue with the vaccine mandate, referencing to other communities, to the state, to King County as lifting the mandate. So that is a primary reason why we're looking at rescinding the requirement.
Are you questioning leaving this in at this stage?
I'm asking why they want to take it out. So just follow up. So the implication of that answer, and maybe I shouldn't be drawing this conclusion, but the implication in my mind was, okay, so we will have better luck at filling this position if we go ahead and hire unvaccinated people. Is that, I mean, that puts it like to an extreme. So I'm not trying to, I understand that probably people's equation is more like flexibility, and I understand, but I'm just saying in a way, is that in essence, ultimately the argument here?
I mean, we do see that could lead to more candidates, more interest in the positions. We have some positions that we have low interest. The responses that we get are, like I just stated, is that they're interested in, is the mandate lifted? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're not vaccinated, but that is primarily why is that we see an opportunity to gather a larger pool for recruitment.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, you're getting me uncomfortable, but go ahead.
What am I? No, help. I'm just trying to get
No,
an
so-
understanding.
So I'm having a hard time using a larger hiring pool as justification for rescinding this. However, I do believe given where we currently are, and that in the midst of the pandemic, we took guidance from those other organizations as far as the legal standing of doing this. They have since rescinded. The pandemic has gone away. I'm reluctant to say that, but abated. Thank you. Has abated to a much lower level than it was, and we have a much more vaccinated population than we did at the time of. So the legal basis for having this in here, regardless of hiring, no longer stands.
I would say if you look at the data, it would still support keeping the policy in place. Even if with the reduced numbers, I think it's still showing a 2 to 6 times, depending on the age group, difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated. And so I think the council would have the option, if it chooses to leave it in place. The data still supports that. And I think even the governor's proclamation where he rescinds it says vaccination is still the most effective way to deal with this.
No argument with that.
Pandemic has not gone away. So I think the data supports whichever choice the council would want to make here.
So just to clarify,
Mr. Carrera is not here, Fire Chief
Yeah,
Carrera
yeah.
is not here. Otherwise, I would ask him to speak to that.
yeah, no, I just want to get clear though, just to make sure I understand. Councilmember Holloway made a comment that I just want to make sure I'm thinking about this right. So is it correct that how do I ask this question? If we were to not change this policy, is there a legal basis to continue the policy?
I believe so. Right.
Okay. So similarly, if we were to rescind it, that would not run afoul of any legal requirements either. Is that true?
Correct.
So legally, we can keep it or not keep it. It's not a question of legality. It's a question of advisability, shall we say. Is this in the best interest of the city and its employees and its residents? That we can just think like that, right?
Correct.
And so the big reason to do this would be it will increase our pool. So we might have trouble filling a position unless we took someone who's unvaccinated. Then the question becomes, with all the data you included in the support, in essence, what level of risk does that represent? Is that perhaps a way to think?
Yeah, I think that is a way to think about it.
Is that what you were thinking as well? Just to share with you a particular point of view, which is my wife just finished a COVID infection. She caught COVID. And so it's been quite long and pretty brutal. We've been separated in my house for 3 weeks. So it's a pretty, I've never caught COVID. I am fully vaccinated. She was fully vaccinated. Nonetheless, she caught it and it was pretty brutal. So just on firsthand experience, which is one data point, not all data points, but on one data point, I can tell you it certainly in my world continues to be a very big danger. And it's having very consequential impacts, certainly at least on my family here in Snoqualmie.
Yeah, that's why I was having to, I don't want to downplay. It's there and it's going to be there for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. So the question is to the degree of risk. So we're looking to increase our candidate pool. That's our goal here. And the question is, to what degree of risk does that create? Are we willing to, let's not say it that way, but that's what we need to think about, perhaps.
Mayor Wanda.
Yeah, so I don't know, that's true. It's about hiring that's one thing. But it also, I think it's unrealistic anymore to require a vaccine mandate in the city when we are seeing the statistics are dropping from COVID and hospitalizations and deaths and things like that. So you don't have other immunization requirements in our personnel policies. It's just removing this requirement. And it does, again, make the hiring pool. We compete against Issaquah, we compete against Redmond, we compete against all those different cities that no longer have that, as well as King County and state requirements.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to ask a question right along the lines of the point that the mayor just made, which is, that was the other sort of questions I had as well. Okay, what other vaccines do we require? So I know that the state requires, or you know what, let me not go there. There may be requirements that exist out there that are not imposed by the city of Snoqualmie, but are there any other vaccinations for anything that the city of Snoqualmie requires other than by reference to some other law that may be out there?
I don't know if you can see my imaginary fire chief hat. I believe by dint of state and county regulations, firefighters and EMS personnel are required to have hepatitis B vaccine.
But that would be required not by the city, but by others.
The condition of employment for the city, but by dint of these other requirements. And Jen, I don't know if there are others that you're aware of. Okay.
So there are no other city requirements where we've put in to personnel policy, you must be vaccinated for something. This is the only one.
Correct.
And Mayor, that's, I think, perhaps the point you were making.
Right, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Councilmember Watton, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I'll chime in. I'm not going to discount the fact that COVID is real and that it has affected so many people, including my own family members. But I think the issue here is really parity. We want to at least mirror what other communities are doing. And I think it's safe enough, even though it's still prevalent out there. It's still, I definitely do not want to discourage somebody from being vaccinated. But I think that at some point we have to close the chapter on this. And I'm in favor of rescinding the COVID requirements.
But also, let me go the other way. Given that the state has repealed its requirement, the county has repealed its requirement, if we were to maintain the requirement, there is some exposure for litigation?
Potentially, we are still in litigation over 2 terminations for non-compliance with the vaccine mandate before. So in this case, not likely to face additional termination litigation since, to the best of our knowledge, all of the employees have demonstrated proof of vaccination to date.
All you really need to sue is a lawyer. So, and there are individuals out there that are emotionally bound up in this issue. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
So, and maybe it was in there and I just sort of didn't see it from this lens. And again, I'm probably asking a Chief Carrera question, but do we know whether there's any information available as to whether, hold on, I'm not sure this question makes sense. Let me just think about it. I don't think this question makes sense. Never mind.
Yeah, I think you were getting into a Fauci question, which I, whatever. All right. Councilor Watson, are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. Next question is consent or non-consent? My vote would be consent, but
Well, I would just make the point that any council member can pull an agenda bill off of consent if they have a concern. So I would say, you know, my lean is always for every agenda bill consent, unless we know there to be disagreement on the council. And I don't know there to be disagreement. So I would say consent. And if there is concern or disagreement, let it manifest by someone pulling it off consent.
all right, let's move it forward in consent. Any objection, Councilor Watson?
No, I concur. Thank you.
And I do apologize. I was
Thank
good to
you.
go. We'll move on to the
All
next
right, thank
agenda, and I apologize. We actually wanted to move the AV to the front, and I messed up, but I tried to get through as fast as I could. So let's, at this stage, move on to report.
Good evening. Share my screen here.
And if in the future I forget, nudge me or throw something.
Well, thank you for moving us forward. I do appreciate that. We have limited time with Avery Dahl joined us from Dimensional Communications. They're the vendor that's going to be working on the project. And he's here just to help answer any questions above and beyond what I can answer for you guys. And for anybody that hasn't met me, I'm Andrew Latham. I'm with the IT department. So it's nice to be here tonight and talk about this. But let's go ahead and move straight into it. Let's see here. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on the room from folks in the city that are part of the commissions that use the room for their own needs. And then we also took all of the council consideration into play when the system was designed. And so the approach, or at least the new approach, what you guys will see when you come in after the installation, is new gooseneck wireless microphones. The microphones are part of a system that's called Televic, which allows for additional control over the meetings. So this will allow for the chair to actually see how people are voting, how they're raising their hands to be called on. There's lights on the front of the microphone that'll designate whether the microphone is on, is muted, active, or waiting to be recognized. And there's also a companion app that goes along with that the chair can hold. Now all of this can be controlled through the standard Zoom application that'll be brought into the room. We'll have a panel on the wall over here, as well as an iPad, kind of like how we have now, that's portable that people can carry around. The companion app allows for additional control over the microphones. So if somebody wants to have the ability to, say, mute someone's microphone, they can do that on that app. And we'll provide training for all of that as well. And like I said, the standard Zoom application will control this. And so if you're okay with people being called on by how they raise their hands and what order they raise their hands, then the standard application that we provide that we'll be doing training on, we'll just take care of all of that for us. In addition to the microphone upgrades, we're also going to be providing several audio or video upgrades as well. So this projector, we installed this projector a few years back. This is a very nice laser projector, but unfortunately it's restricted by the wiring and cabling that was installed when the building was first put in. So that's why the image is a little fuzzy. I'm sure that people noticed that on the display. And so all of the wiring will be replaced in the room. We'll have a brand new audio video switcher installed. So this will get its native resolution. So we'll have a nice, clean, crisp image on the projector. We're also going to be installing multiple television sets over off to the sides of the room. And I brought some cutouts that were supplied through from Dimensional. Avery brought those out. I appreciate that. So if anyone wants to see the visual of what it'll look like, I'd be happy to hold those up for you. But the idea is that we'll have two 65-inch displays on the other side facing out towards the towards the audience, so they can see what's going on in the presentation. And then we'll have two 55-inch displays that'll sit just under the lip here on either side towards council, so you can also see the presentations. You don't have to strain your neck. They'll be angled, yeah.
So we would look like this, is that correct?
Yes, if you want to get a good, nice, close look at what's going on. All of the cameras, and so there'll be a slight camera upgrade as well. We'll be reutilizing the two cameras that we currently have in the council. We didn't want to replace those. Those are both really nice high-end cameras. What Dimensional will be adding is cameras in the back here that will be facing down towards council. And what those will do is they'll recognize the microphones picking up or the microphones turning on and who's speaking. And so it will frame two tables, and the two tables. So as people talk, those people will be highlighted up on the display for everybody to see. Let's see here. What else are we doing? Oh, one of the other big improvements is so on top of the wireless microphone upgrade, we're also going to be putting a room microphone in here. This will help out with people, say, where I am, that want to walk left and right while they're talking, or just to help with, say, a commission or a meeting with all the staff coming in. It'll just be a general microphone that'll pick up everything in this space and help to provide a clear tones. Anybody that's used the fire department, we have one of those out in the fire department right now. Avery helped me with that whole setup as well. So if anybody wants to see it or wants a tour, I'd be happy to do that with you as well. We've had great luck out there with that space, with nothing but good feedback. And I'm really impressed with, I guess, how far some of this technology has come along since the last time I've gotten to dip my toes into this. But I think that's about it for this. I have time to answer any questions.
Two questions, I think.
Yeah.
One is, these microphones that we have
Mhm.
are always on, unless you press a button and hold it to turn it off.
That's correct.
What would be really nice is if it was inverse, which is either that it was always off or was off, that you could turn it off, so to speak. Is that one of the features?
It is. So from what I understand, there's multiple modes that the microphones can be set in, and that's something that the chair can control. So you can have a mode where they're just always on. You can have it where they're naturally off and you have to turn them on. Or I think the third one that Avery was talking about was as people raise their hand and want to be recognized, that's how that would function. And he may be able to speak more to that if you have any further questions about how that section will work.
Well, so let me make sure I understood what you said. So what I was getting at was the notion that, so me as someone could, turn my microphone on or off.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's not possible. Someone else would do that.
Well, there's multiple settings for the room, and that decision can be made however you want. So like I said, you can have it so all the mics are naturally on,
Mhm.
or you can have it so that they're naturally off. And then you have to push the button and speak. It's just the mode that you're talking about there. So I wanted to give some flexibility and options, and that'll be on the touch panel in the configuration.
So let me make sure, sorry to press, I just want to make sure I understand you.
I want to make sure you do too.
Yeah, so if the chair was to say, okay, I'll put them all in default on,
Yes.
would I still be able to turn mine to an off? Or would it?
Understand it?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can chime in on that. You have Avery Dahl here with Dimensional Communications. I designed the system with Andy, and the answer is yes. These we can program these to there's light feedback, so there's going to be a light on the actual microphone head, and there'll be a light on the base unit itself. Typically in this situation, we would program those to live being green and red being muted. So as I've come to understand this room, it sounds like what the council would like was to have all the mics defaulted to off. And then they either put it in a push to talk mode. So you have to hold the button down and then release when you're done, or you can toggle it on and off. And you will get immediate light feedback for that. So as soon as you are live, the mic will go green. As soon as it's not live, it'll be red again. If you've requested to speak, or what they call a request to speak or a figurative hand raise, You press your button and your red light will pulse until you're acknowledged, and then it'll go green. And then, of course, you have the power to turn that back off again. So we have given, the idea is to give all the council members the ability to turn on their mics, but the idea is they more or less default to off. And that's just best practice when you're not going to get a good result with 14 open mics.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks for that answer. I just had one other question.
Can I let Councilman Watton?
Of course.
Councilman Watton, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to see something new and something better than what we have. My one concern is, and having just done this with my room and next to my office, the 65-inch screen is awesome for that size of room. I'm just wondering if we should be stepping up the size of the monitors given the size of that space of the room, because there usually isn't a whole lot of cost difference anymore between 55 and 65 and 77 or even 85. And I just wanted to find out more kind of the thought process on why we shouldn't go larger on those screens.
Sure. And I've got a real quick, clear and concise answer. Head clearance.
Okay. Okay.
So what Andy has in the cardboard cutouts I brought that down because I wanted, already at 65 inches, the TVs are going to hang low, not head knocker low, but they're going to like look low in the space. You'd have to be a NBA basketball player to have any risk of with some thick shoes on to hit your head on these things. But 99.9% of the population will have no issue, but going any bigger than 65 will start to create potential safety hazards.
Okay. Okay. So there's a good reason for not going larger.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not sure if Councilmember Watton saw it.
I can kind of visualize from here, and I'm gonna take my fellow council members' judgment.
Okay.
You have a following question, Councilman?
Yeah, Councilmember Watton, it's a tricky deal because the guy holding up the sign is really tall. So, you know,
I
you
don't
have
wanna
to
hit my head on
do
the,
some
television.
visualization in your mind. So sorry, my follow-up question is one thing that I've always found difficult in this room is the podium you're standing at. And now, see, you're lucky you talk with a loud voice. So, but many people, you know, 6 feet or higher, find themselves trying to lean over to get towards that microphone. But then you said something about the way the mic pickup was going to work there. Maybe it's completely different. But if there's a, what do you call this? If there's a mic on a, whatever this thing is, that will, at the podium, will it be longer?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know how long the gooseneck microphones are. Avery might be able to answer that one.
They're 15-inch goosenecks. And let me verify if I can get longer ones. I believe they do make an 18.
I think you might want to look at possibly for just that location going maybe as long a goose. Wow.
Yep. That would be.
Do not say as long as you can get, because I don't know how big that could be, but
Up here.
you might think about trying to height, you know, put a little more height on that for tall people who I think struggle with that particular height of gooseneck.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we can take a look at. That's simple addition. Yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Yep. And these are bi-flexing mics, so they have 2 points of flex in them. So even if we put in the biggest 24-inch mic, you could still bend that thing down pretty good to accommodate a variety of heights.
You might want to look at that. I think that might, I've just seen so many people struggle with it, and I have myself. So.
Right. Yeah. If you're a little too far away or you're almost eating it, it can cause some problems. I have a feeling the age of these microphones, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that these new ones that we're getting are probably a little bit better. And then we'll pay attention to that too and try and test it from multiple areas to get kind of a general idea of where people should stand. And then I believe on top of that, and correct me if I'm mistaken, the room microphone, the area microphone, we may be able to target it at this location of the space as well.
Yeah, I'll want to take that conversation offline with you, Andy.
Okay.
We had kind of gone back and forth on the design, and I don't currently have that room mic in because we'd got such good coverage with the 14 goosenecks and the 2 walkabouts. So you still have 2 handhelds that are kind of what they call pass around mics.
Okay.
So you can hand those to an audience member. Most importantly, you can, if someone not the council is utilizing the room and you don't want to give them your new Televic, you give them the 2 handheld mics to use the Zoom system with.
Correct.
And they'd still be up and running with a nice system without having to have your brand new infrastructure being utilized by potentially unknown users or various users. Let's put it that way. We'd be reutilizing only the two existing handheld microphones. Those are very light duty and still a modern make and model on those. So just in the interest of not selling you something that is still a good product, we're gonna reutilize that infrastructure but again, those will be pass around mics. So those would be a handheld form factor that can be clipped into something if you want to, if they want a tabletop stand, or if they want to pass them around the audience in those 2 variations. But
Yeah, I didn't realize that was removed, so we should probably have a discussion about that.
yeah, I'll circle back on that one. I apologize for any mistake I made on that part, but we'll definitely get that cleared up.
Okay.
All right, I'll give you my feedback. I'm emotionally opposed to most of the things you propose here. Okay? One, I don't want to get us into the practice or even given the opportunity for Robert's Rules of Order enforcement by microphone. I disagree with that. 2, for stationary mics, there's absolutely no reason for them to be wireless. Matter of fact, every wireless microphone gives an opportunity for a meeting not to happen because of a dead battery. Okay? So if it's a stationary mic, you guys got to tell me there's a cost differential or something, or why it's got to be wireless, because I don't want meetings held up because of a battery. Okay?
Fair, yeah.
You're replacing one roughly functional screen with 5 really nice screens. I question whether or not we've gone a little too far taking it that. My third point is, guys, I can't even hold a Zoom meeting without IT in the back of the room. And you have complicated this in orders of magnitude to make these meetings happen. So we're going to have to struggle, and we'll have to continually have IT in the back of the room because we've made this too complicated. Okay, Zoom really should not be that complicated. People are I have meetings all day long in which I chair. Okay, out of my laptop all day long, 8 hours a day. I'm around the world talking to people, and there's no other IT to facilitate me.
Well,
Okay, so we need to address the issue of being literate in our staff to run the meetings, irregardless of what other technology you have. Eventually, we ought to be able to do these meetings without Jimmy sitting in the back, and he can go home and actually enjoy some primetime TV. Okay. Sorry.
I should have been more clear about the Zoom room functionality. This would be a full Zoom room, which means that it has integration with the city's Zoom accounts, and members can just come in and start their meetings. The idea is to get us out of managing the commission meetings so that you guys can just come in and start your meetings, and then it turns on in a way that can be easily used.
That can happen with or without this equipment. And we haven't taken those steps to date.
The age of the space, the age of the space does require some upgrade in order to be functional, like these types of things. I would agree that there is a smaller version of this that can be proposed. This was based off the feedback that we received from senior staff and from council and some of the other members. There was an email passed around council group that they contributed into, and that's where the Televic portion came from, the ability to control the microphones. That's where that section of this came from.
You need to control where you ask us, do we like cake? and we all say, yes, love cake,
Yeah,
there's always a cost to a cake. And we don't get into that conversation. This is pretty, I haven't seen the final dollar figure on this, but this is a good chunk of change we're paying on this room,
mhm.
which isn't broke. It's not perfect,
Well,
and it can be better,
it is broke.
but how far do we push better?
The reason why this room functions right now is because of me. And honestly, because I came in here and I hooked up equipment. This is ad hoc, you heard that term. So we're using a lapel wireless microphone transmitter to get the audio into the Zoom meeting. And this is something that we've been asked to support in a near, this room is near failure. And so we've been asked to support like this for quite a few years. And with these types of things that are not used at other places in order to transmit the audio, or at least to get the basic stuff around. And so while I agree, this is a lot, I do think that something really needs to be done. And so if it's not this, and this is too much, I understand that. We still need to move forward and find a solution for some of the primary issues that we brought forward and communicated to senior staff and to our director as well.
I
And
get no
so
argument
that is
with that.
important.
Ultimately, I do want you guys get to go have a life.
Yeah. Until
and-
that's addressed, we don't get to. We're here because this fails often, and we can very quickly get it up and back up and running. And we're trying to eliminate that being an issue any longer.
I think we've gone beyond that. I'm just a little uncomfortable how far beyond that we've gone.
That's fair. That's a fair criticism.
I'm cheap.
Well, I'm sure that Avery and I can continue to work towards a goal of ensuring to have a system, something in here that fits everybody's needs.
I think I can forward to you the email that was based on council input for everything that he is talking about.
Just looking for some love.
He's a very friendly dog, and I apologize. Councilor Mayhew.
Maybe just to kind of explore just a bit some of the things that Councilmember Holloway brought up. One thing in particular I just want to focus on for a minute is the need for in-room IT support. So wonder maybe if you could speak to that just by way of frame of reference that I have. And I apologize. I wish I could remember the name of the equipment we use at my company.
Yeah.
But because that would probably let you tune in, you'd know exactly what I was referring to. But you know, in our meeting, in our boardroom, we have a couple TVs, fine. I won't go into, it's really easy to hook up whatever kind of computer you've got. You can even do it wirelessly, fine, whatever. The thing is that it doesn't require any IT support.
Mhm.
That you just sort of, it's sort of plug and play, so to speak. You sort of turn on the equipment, and maybe that's what you're referring to over on the wall. You just sort of turn it on.
Yes.
There's like literally all you have to do is push the on off button.
That's what we're trying to move to.
Okay. And so you turn it on and it works great. Now, if you want, it's got more advanced features, which you might have to have some training to know how to use. But turning it on and making it work pretty effectively in the room, the camera that's in there, it just zooms in on whoever's talking. I have no idea how it does that, but it does it magically. So it does it, but so you just turn it on, it knows how to do that. There's a couple in our boardroom, there's a couple microphones, several, when I say a couple, I don't know if it's 2, 4, whatever it is, that are just there, and they manage to work together to pick up whoever's talking. And then the only issue is you sort of plug in your computer if you want to portray something from your screen, which just becomes plug and play. So what's the point of that big story? It's a lead in to what I experience is a no IT support situation. Now, granted, something might break, but normal operation, you just turn it on and you're in business. Is that something we can get to, or would this still require in-room IT support? Does Jimmy still have to give up his primetime TV?
What the planning of this, what we want it to get to is that, yes, there'll still be IT support for council. We're not here just for the meeting, we're here for you guys. to come in and ask any questions if you're having issues with your accounts or your computers. We also like to make sure that the room is working. So for council, that will continue to have, you'll have somebody here. You won't have two people here though, you'll only have the one. For commissions, we plan on training and empowering people to do those meetings on their own. The touch screen will allow you to just start your Zoom meeting through there and share just the same way as we've been sharing now. The presenter can come up, they can share their screen, it'll be part of the Zoom meeting, it'll be part of the record that way. So we're not trying to add additional complexities like that. We're trying to simplify this. Now, the room itself will be complicated from a technical standpoint, but you don't need to see any of that.
We just push the on button.
You push the on button, you grab the panel, you push your button, you go to your meeting, you start your meeting, and then away you go. There's also going to be a computer in here too. So you'll still have the same way of running meetings through here if that's what you prefer. You can have a wireless keyboard, you can log in and do that. So we'll have the same functionality, but everything will be simplified. We'll have proper cabling ran for audio pass through for the Zoom meeting. All of the cameras in here will also be mixed together for the Zoom meeting. None of that stuff is controlled by anybody in particular. We'll go through that ahead of time. And so what the people see in Zoom will kind of be a more, all of our camera feeds will be put together, and they'll also be able to see council members as they speak. So it'll be a more professional approach, I think.
And that'll all basically be self-functioning in the equipment.
It will.
Okay, so like this meeting, which is not a full council meeting, it's just a committee meeting.
Right.
We would not need an IT support here to accomplish what we're doing tonight.
That's the idea, with the proper training for the person that runs the meeting. Each department needs to designate somebody to run the commission meeting. We don't do that, but as long as that's in place, we want to train that person on how the room works, and we expect them to go ahead and run the meeting moving forward. Once that's in place and the training is done, like I said, we expect them to do that.
Councilor Watton, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. And I totally agree with Council Member Mayhew and Mayor Pro Tem Holloway. I think the frustration is when we have meetings, and for instance, when we're upstairs in the conference room and it takes a staff person to run the meeting by Zoom, that needs to be different, because it's just putting way too much responsibility on the staff that's already stretched. And we should be able to run it not only in the council chambers, but in the other rooms as well. So I'm hoping that this is the solution, because I have seen, camera systems and microphones that I have in my conference room, and it's incredibly far better than what we have now. And so I totally understand that we need to make an investment. I just am concerned about how much we really have to spend.
All right, that's it. I think you've heard the feedback. Are we good with the conversation?
Yeah, unless there's any other questions.
Sarah had a question.
Sarah, you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to make sure and kind of clarify one of the pieces, having talked with Andy and helped with some of this. When we talk about training, we're not talking about learning how to operate all the technical pieces of the room. We found that staff and others, don't technically use some of this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Zoom. I know for over the last 3 years, you think everyone has that knowledge because everyone's been remote, but we have a lot of people in the city, especially our first responder staff and things like that have been on the scene and don't necessarily do everything via Zoom like a lot of people have. So there's been that request to better understand the tools and things like that. So that's what we're really referring to. We never expect anyone to be the expert on the system or how it is. You should come in, plug your computer in, like you said, flip a switch and start your meeting. And at the end of the day, that is what this does. And I just wanted to make sure to clarify that, or wanted to clarify that piece.
And Councilmember Watton, if you've had some issues in one of our little Psi or big Psi, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what problems you were having, and I can address those.
I think the one thing is, we as council members can't go into a room and hold a meeting without having to rely on staff being there to run the Zoom.
You should be able to do that, Councilmember Wanton. So that's why I'm concerned if you aren't able to log in. Go ahead and just let me know.
Okay.
You should
Okay.
have full access to log into those computers in both Big Sci and Little Sci.
Okay. Then maybe it's a training program that I need to be in.
Hey, and maybe we can do that. I certainly don't mind if the council wants to have some meeting training. I'd be happy to do that. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. And let's move on to agenda 5, ERP update.
Hello, thank you all. Actually, the real reason I was here this evening was to talk about the ERP and give my monthly update. So thank you all, and thank you for allowing me to kind of talk about the other piece as well. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So March of 2023, we are moving forward. Lots has been happening, as you know. We are getting closer and closer to really rolling over and using this from a finance perspective. And I just went through like 3 slides. So key topics really are milestones that we're hitting, timeline, and risk assessment. Really want to make sure I keep this kind of short and sweet for you guys, let you know what might be coming down the line, see if there's any questions. So right now we have started our practice and training sessions within Munis, which that means is we've set up a bunch of codes, put in a bunch of accounts, done a lot of setup over the last year. Now we're trying all this out. Our goal is to break it now so that it doesn't break when we go live this summer. First week went really well. People, it was one of those really, oh, aha, I have to break old habits type things. I'm used to doing this way, and this new system does it a completely different way. So it was really good. They, everyone who's been participating in setup knows what it's going to do, but now they really see how they're going to do it. We have more. So in April and May, we'll continue to have testing and practice sessions. Official testing with Tyler will go through May, with then finalizing and fixing anything before the summer launch. We will continue, though, internally to have practice and implementation sessions, even past the go live date. There'll be pieces like purchasing and things like that that we'll bring online in chunks with the different departments. So as we're doing this, we're going to make sure everyone is really up to speed, understands what they're doing before they do it. And again, we will make that official book changeover for our main pieces of finance on August 1st. The HR module has started, and I'm very excited about this piece as well. We talked about last month how this potentially could be a risk, and was one of the new risk factors is that we're starting multiple modules in this project. But we have started off strong. The team really has planned and coordinated both on the finance and HR sides, as of course there's overlap. One of the big things I want to talk about is we started the code building, so that's getting the structure there, but it's really what's coming down the line for this. We're getting to the point now where the whole city is going to really see the piece of the software that they're most engaged in, that they really wanted, to be honest. I mean, we're making everyone switch over and change, but from an employee perspective, we're going to get into using the employee self-service tools. So based on whether you are an exempt or non-exempt employee, there's different tools you'll get to use. Our employees who are putting in their time on a regular basis, that are hourly and paid, are going to have an app that ends up right on their phone. So rolling out anything like this can get complicated, and we are starting small, and we're going to test often and really work through it. So we've already started engaging and letting people know this is coming down the line. We're going to start doing some soft with the code building testing on what we put in there, so that we can see that with some groups and some volunteers we've been asking for, guinea pigs, for our experiment. And that will be happening starting in May and June. Then we'll actually start doing parallel payroll runs, which means that at the same time, we'll start asking employees to actually stop moving from their paper time. Well, they'll have to continue to do the paper time cards, but we'll also be then utilizing it and putting that time into the timekeeping system and training them how to use it. So they'll get to try it out, see what the features are, see what works best, and then see how that rolls into the system to ensure that when we do go live with it, we've found the bugs, we have found where it is, and we've really given them the opportunity to understand this piece. When we went to start talking about this and started bringing this in, these are things that were asked for. Could we move this module up a year? And the answer was no, because you do need the finance and piece there and you need it to be solid. But really getting some good active engagement here, and really excited that we'll be able to really start using the employee self-service. Managers are going to be able to see employee time, accruals, and things like that right up front. It's going to make their jobs easier. It's going to cut back on the time that's being spent by finance and payroll right now to send out reports on that type of information stuff monthly. So it's really going to make everyone's job easier and more streamlined. Questions so far? All right.
So go on.
So then really just kind of talking about timeline. We are getting into the testing portion of finance. We have really started the development and implementation of HR. We are actually jumping into the work for asset management already. We have talked about all the planning we've done since last year. We are getting their computers out to them now. They're starting to be able to go into the field at the end of this month. Some of the people up through the beginning of next month, and start collecting the data that's going to be necessary to put into the system. So we're going to get really getting ahead of that and mitigating the risk, and hopefully the need to rush or have increased costs down the road to get that data and stuff out there. So really planning and working closely with them to ensure we give them that time. Our risks are all the same from what we talked about last month. Again, with the only new thing being the addition of the continued modules. We're going to see that. We are looking at adding more modules in the next couple of months and other software. So that'll include bringing in some more planning. It's going to take a lot of planning, honestly. It's going to take a lot of communication. My biggest recommendation in any of this is going to be that before we start any of these other pieces, we're going to come to you guys with new contracts and stuff like that. But part of the plan and what we'll share with you is this continual planning and thought process we're putting through before we start these things. We're looking at a module procedure. Jen has been very big with the finance and HR teams, and even the other leadership, and talking about this process of rolling things out slowly. So what have we learned? We're doing lessons learned. We're then taking those lessons learned and putting into that planning, because we really are hitting critical places where if we're not doing this, then we are going to not be able to finish on time. We're not going to be able to meet what we've said, and the cost will go up. So again, we're not there. We're not close to that right now. But those are things that we will continue to share with you as we add these things, because that's the information we know you want to know. We want to get ahead of that. And if we're not getting ahead of that, you guys need to know that. Any questions?
What are your 6 items that you had?
Oh, yes, I can reshare that too. Let's see. Actually, well, I can throw this into my deck, and I can go ahead and just share my risk register out with you guys, which would probably be easier, honestly, at this point. And I can just then add that to the end of the deck. So they have that for records. So the first risk is resistance to change, which is, I've never worked on a project where that isn't a risk, to be honest. Like, no one wants to change anything. We had high employee turnover. We are filling those gaps, but there are still gaps in key departments such as Parks and Public Works and places like that, that we will start to feel those stresses. So we don't want to remove that yet or bring that down. Physical resources is one of those things that has been called out, truthfully, mostly by Tyler as a concern from their projects. We have never had a portion yet. We have extra computers for those that don't have computers yet. We have room and space. The city has been great at letting us have first priority whenever we need anything. Weather and travel delays, a lot of our things have actually been done via remotely. So we've cut down on costs on expenses, honestly, for travel for our vendors, and have been able to minimize the need to bring them in. So that's also hasn't been an issue. Decision making, especially in the beginning of this project, we didn't have a strong steering committee. That has significantly changed with leadership changes in the city, and that has reduced that risk. Data access, we brought on a SQL specialist to pull our data, so that again has significantly reduced that risk. Our third-party integrations, we have been able to limit and actually reduce the number of these. One of the initiatives, finance as an example, is consolidating all of our payment processing so that instead of having multiple credit card vendors like Square and Paychecks and other things like that, the city will use one consistent party across all areas. Resource availability. This really focuses towards the need to plan around things such as payroll cycles and audit time and things like that. During the first kind of 6 months last year, there was realization that there were just times we thought we could do things that we couldn't. So we have that, with lessons learned moving forward. We had a very bad Tyler consultant. So we are putting things in place to pre-screen. I had a conversation today actually with the team about preparing for utility billing that's coming up and getting to know and kind of start interviewing who our implementation consultant will be now. We know what we need now. We know what we want. Tyler has had staffing issues. Without really kind of understanding some of that, we wound up with some poor performing individuals, honestly, and had to ask to have them replaced. So we're getting ahead of that. The availability of Tyler ICs kind of folds into this, honestly. They, like everyone else, had a staffing shortage that led to a training and knowledge shortage on their end. And that still exists. They're taking on more customers and clients, planning things ahead, really being that vocal counterpoint. Jen has been great with helping to support and making sure that we are the priority. We're paying for this. This is what we're doing. This is what we've had the problems with. We're going to change this, and this is how we're going to do it. Multiple phase implementation is the new one. And that is really the fact that we have so much going on and only so many people in the city to do it.
Okay.
Okay. I can talk. I apologize.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, council position 5 number of interviews. So as we talked, and Councilor Watton, you can hear it too. We've got what I'll call 7.5 applicants. We have had one applicant who submission was not complete. Kind of one of the questions I think we ought to discuss is, what do we do about that? My recommendation is, well, let me take into two things. One, I think it would be unfair to say unresponsive. This is not a bid package, so to say unresponsive to the bid package and so sorry, no, would probably be inappropriate. Further, I think it would be inappropriate to the other candidates to go back out to this individual and say, hey, take another hack at it, give it back to us a couple of days. So my recommendation is we take the application as submitted and we proceed on with the 8 candidates to do interview. Thoughts, Councilor Watton?
I think he dropped off.
Oh, we had to leave. Okay, you and I already talked and kind of like to proceed along those paths. The other one would be 8 candidates chunk. When are we going to do this? Proposal is, I believe at this stage, to have a special council meeting just to go through the candidates and to do this on the 28th, I believe the date was, which would be the Tuesday after a normal council meeting. I think if you're okay with that, we take that forward as proposal to council next Monday, but let's proceed on with that plan at this stage and get their buy-in Monday. No?
That wouldn't be enough notice.
Okay, never
For a
mind.
special
Let's
meeting.
move
Need
on
notice,
and
yeah.
we'll advise them that's what we're going to do. They can always turn us off if nobody's available.
What was our notice to do?
Can't make the decision on Monday to have.
Oh,
the
to do
meeting on
Tuesday. Yeah.
We need to make the decision now. Let's go ahead and schedule the meeting, have it a Tuesday following the next council meeting. We will advise council Monday that that's what we're doing, and we'll see if by bad luck, we don't get a quorum on Tuesday. I don't expect it, but let's double check on Monday.
Just to be clear, that would be a meeting starting at 6 p.m. and there would be interviews for each of the 8 candidates of 15 minutes, followed by an executive session for discussion. That is what you're requesting for Tuesday night.
Yep.
So roughly 2 hours of interviews, followed by, I'll call it an hour executive session.
Our executive session. Mayor?
Do you think you will make a decision after all those interviews? Or I think in the past, you actually maybe interviewed like the top 3 or something again.
Because it's a special meeting, we would need to note a potential action on that agenda if it could even be noted as just possible if you wanted to leave
I
leave
think
it open.
aspirational, I'd love to make the decision that night. But if we get into it, I think it's a decision we have to make in the throw of it. That if we want to limit the pool down and go do a second interview, that's something we would probably decide Tuesday night.
Okay. Well, then
So
then
we can notice it for potential action.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll notice it as meeting starting at 6 PM, 15-minute interviews for each of the 8 candidates, executive session, and then possible action after the executive session.
Yep. Mayor?
I also think we need to be flexible with the candidates because I believe on the website, it showed that like interviews would happen on the 27th. And so if someone's out of town on the 28th, then we should be able to still interview them if they're available that evening, but virtual.
Oh, yeah, virtual, if they have to, virtual's fine. And I do want to make, and I have not asked names, the one candidate that had the partial, can we advise that candidate that we are, you missed a few questions, but we're proceeding forward. And if they're uncomfortable, then I will ask a name and a phone number, and I'll give the individual a call and let them know, hey, took the action as pro tem, we're moving forward with this. Please be aware you missed a couple of questions.
I'll reach out.
Okay. Good to go? And let's advise, like I said, Monday, let's get an email out to the rest of the council, advise them not to plan something on that Tuesday. Okay. You do that or you want me to do that?
I can do that.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. And with that, I believe that covers that. And then let's review draft city council agenda for May 27th. Is that right? Yep. All right. We're starting at 6 PM with a roundtable. And the executive session roundtable at the beginning is for purposes of,
Comp and class study?
It's a closed session to discuss possible positions to be taken in bargaining.
okay. And then we'll adjourn and we'll go in the regular session at 7 o'clock. Roll call, pledge of allegiance, agenda approval, public hearings, presentation appointments. At this stage, we have no public hearing appointments or presentations scheduled. No proclamations. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which will approval of the minutes, approval of claims reports, approval of Attorney General's office, opioid distributor manufacturing settlement, memorandum of understanding with IAFF Local 328, an agreement with FCS on 2024 comprehensive plan facilities and utilities elements. And I believe also Agenda Bill 23038 can move up under consent. From Parks and Public Works. We'll move, after consent, we'll move on to ordinances. We'll have vehicle trespass ordinance, which will be a second reading. I'm sure that's coming from public safety. And then we'll move into committee reports. Public safety has no other agenda bills. Community development has no other agenda bills. Parks and Public Works will have the Riverwalk design contract with Burger Partnership. And F&A will have the agenda bill for rescinding policy 2.33.
That was in.
Oh, we put that, yeah, that one also can move up to consent. So F and A will have no agenda bills. We want to do the council chambers AV update to council as a whole. And then we'll move into report, mayor reports, commission committee liaison reports, council member regional liaison updates. And we will close with a potential executive session. Is that a continuation of the 6 o'clock?
No.
No.
Rob, or
I'm sorry.
Bob, we have an executive session at the end of council?
Yes, for a litigation matter. We anticipate that to be short, no more than 15 minutes.
Don't jinx it by saying.
Well, sorry, actually, and for this is for the 27th, we would want to add also a potential property acquisition matter similar to the last time around. So I would say
Okay, so there's potential action following.
potential action following on both items.
All right, and we'll close out with, well, first we'll do any of those potential actions and then we'll move to adjournment. Any other revisions or comments? It looks good. All right, with that, with those changes as noted, I think you have a council agenda for next Monday. Proceed forward. Are there other items to come before the committee? If not, I'm not seeing anything online. Unless you object, we will be adjourned.
No objection.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. All right, Rufus.